Hey everyone, while I'm out for this day, we're going to do a little practice that will help us prepare to use the quadratic formula in our next lesson. So basically what we're going to do for this prep is simplify an expression that looks like this, because we're going to have to do this when we're using the quadratic formula. So I know that this looks really complicated, but the idea is we just simplify it piece by piece. So we're going to kind of identify some parts that we can simplify. For this one, we can do negative 15. We can do negative 15 squared. And we can do 4 times 5 times 10. And then we can do 2 times 5. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so negative 15, that just becomes positive 15, right? Then we have minus, and then we have our big square root. And underneath the square root, we have negative 15 squared. So that's negative 15 times negative 15, right? Which will be a positive 225. Minus, now we're going to do 4 times 5 times 10. So 4 times 5 is 20, times 10 gives us 200. All divided by 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, so we did 4 rounds of simplification there. We changed negative 15 to positive 15, negative 15 squared to 225, 4 times 5 times 10 to 200, and 2 times 5 to 10. Everything else stayed the same. So this subtraction stayed the same, the square root stayed the same, this subtraction stayed the same, and the division. Okay, next thing we're going to simplify is 225 minus 200 underneath the square root. So I guess we're on purple. We're going to do this now. So 15 minus square root stays the same. 225 minus 200 gives us just 25 now under the square root. All divided by 10 stays the same. Okay, now we're going to simplify this square root, right? So 15 minus the square root of 25 is just 5, all divided by 10. So everything else stays the same. And now we can just combine this top. So 15 minus 5, that gives us 10 divided by 10. And finally, 10 divided by 10 is 1. Okay, so we did lots of rounds of simplification there. The most simplifications happened from the first step to the second. Then we just did what was under the square root. Then we evaluated the square root. We did the subtraction in the numerator. And then finally, the last step was to do the division. Okay, we're going to do one more like this. All right, so this one, we have negative 6, so that's just negative 6. Plus, underneath the square root, we have 6 squared, so we can simplify 6 squared, right? And then we have minus 4 times 1 times negative 7, so let's do those multiplications. 4 times 1 times negative 7. And then in the denominator, we can do 2 times 1. So, rewriting with our first round, negative 6 plus square root. Underneath the square root, we have 6 squared, which is 36, minus 4 times 1 times negative 7 gives us negative 28. So now we're doing minus negative 28. All divided by 2 times 1 is just 2. Okay, so now for our next round, we can simplify what's underneath the square root. So we can do 36 minus negative 28. And remember that when we subtract a negative, it's the same as adding a positive. So we're going to get negative 6 plus, my cat is trying to sit on my lap right now. Underneath the square root, 36 plus 28 would become 56, 64. All divided by 2 stays the same. This looks really ugly. Okay, so now we're going to simplify that square root. So we're actually going to find the square root of 64. So now we have negative 6 plus the square root of 64 is 8, all divided by 2. Okay, now we can simplify the numerator. So we can do negative 6 plus 8. So negative 6 plus 8 is 2, divided by 2. And then finally we can do 2 divided by 2, which in this case also ends up being 1. It's not always going to be 1. This was just kind of an accident that these both ended up being 1, I guess. Okay, but so that's basically how you can simplify an expression of this type, which we're going to be doing when we use the quadratic formula to solve equations. Okay, thanks for watching.